This is the story of the Sailor Pen Company. Hey Goodfellas, I'm Samuel Naldi and we are at Style of Zug. Everything always starts with an idea coming from the brain of a human that maybe has sketched that idea down on a napkin or on a piece of paper and has written the first notes about what this thing must become. Ideas that will shape the future of the world or of certain industries. This is the story of Sailor and of Mr. Kyugoro Sakata, which shaped the industry of fine writing instruments. And we shall remember that stories of brands are often the stories of the founders of the brand that went through a specific journey that today we call heritage and is part of the DNA of a brand. So we start this story with Mr. Kyugoro Sakata, which was born in 1883 in Shizuke Izue Mura, in the Okayama prefecture, as Monzo Sakata's fifth son. There isn't really much that we're able to know from his early age, if not that Mr. Sakata must have been a very hardworking and ambitious young man from early age. Since 1897, so when he was only 14 years old, he moved to Kure to help his older brother, Sajiro Sakata, at his metal stationery factory. I tried to research about the Sakata family, but there is nothing on the internet. But this shall give us hints that the Sakata family was probably quite entrepreneurial. Maybe already Mr. Kyugoro Sakata's father was quite entrepreneurial, or at least we can say that the father grew the kids to be very ambitious and willing to create something special. And it was exactly there, during that time, in the factory of his brother, that together they started developing Japan's first gold nib. The legend says that Mr. Kyugoro Sakata was inspired to create gold nibs after a sailor, friend of him, returned from UK to Japan and gifted him a British-made gold-nibbed fountain pen. In 1904 and 1905, Mr. Sakata had to pause his work as a metal worker because he was called to enlist in military for the Japanese Russo War that started in February 1904 and lasted until September 1905. To give you a bit more of context, this was a war that was fought between the Japanese Empire and the Russian Empire over a rival imperial ambitions in Manchuria and the Korean Empire. And the war at the end was won by the Japanese Empire. For his military efforts, Mr. Sakata was also decorated with the Order of the Golden Kite for bravery. Now just imagine, you're just 20 years old, you're working, have ambitions, you have a dream, and then you get called for something so dangerous and futile like a war, not knowing if your dreams will ever become a reality. Then the war ends and you have all these inputs, all these memories from the war, which is outrageous and always terrible. And you have to find the strength to get back to your dreams and ambitions that you had 2 years earlier. And in between, such an incredible event in the life of a human being. I mean, I sometimes have difficulties getting back on track and back to work when I have a 1-week vacation and kind of refocusing on all the things that need to be done. I would say that probably men back then were just built different, even more if we're talking about Japanese men. And so back from his military efforts, Mr. Sakata continued developing his dream and working on the first Japanese gold nib. And back at the time, obviously, we were talking about the development of a 14-karat gold nib. Then, in 1911, he decided to go all in and establish his own factory in Inaricho, Kure, for stationery and for the production of golden nibs. From this event and date, 1911, we also now have more context about that very famous and specific model of sailor called 1911. We don't know if the factory of the brother maybe was dismissed because of the war and he had to stop operations and the brother started working with Mr. Kyugoro Sakata in this new factory. What we know is that this first original manufacturer was named Sakata Manufactory. And like many times after the war, this was a moment of growth for industries and business. The demand of the items that were produced in his factory was growing, and also his ambition to do more was growing. So Mr. Sakata decided that he did not only wanted to produce single elements or parts, but he wanted to create something that was complete and a finished product. So to do that, in 1917, he decided to build a new, bigger factory and relocate the business to Hamadacho, which is still in Kure. Now, there are a bit of differing information about when the company was named the Sailor Pen Sakata Manufactory Company Limited. Some information say it was right after establishing this new factory in 1917, and some other information refer to the fact that it was in 1932. After that, the fountain pen production department was made a business corporation, and they built an additional factory in Iwakatadori in Kure. But what is interesting to know, and we're going to read about that a bit later, is the fact that the name Sailor was chosen to reflect the international spirit of the brand and its commitment to navigating new horizons in pen manufacturing. Probably it was also an homage to that friend that gifted him that fountain pen when he came back from UK. And by 1926, the company had already 300 employees that were working and creating stationery items and wonderful fountain pens. And one of the turning points for the company and the founder was when the Emperor Showa decided to visit the factory to encourage the industry and as a sign of appreciation for the pioneeristic work of Mr. Kyugoro Sakata. Indeed, a huge honor, considering that it wasn't one of Japan's biggest factories, and it was established only 15 years before that date. So this was a moment that gave to the Sailor company a huge credibility and also big recognition worldwide. The following 13 years were all about establishing the brand and building the sales network, opening further offices all across Asia, and making sure that the brand would grow. Then, from 1939 to 1945, we all know what happened to this world. The Second World War was going on, and it wasn't an easy time for no one in the world. And we also know that Japan had several complicated conflicts with big and important countries. The rest is part of a sad portion of history of humankind. These are some of the things that happened during that time, when Mr. Sakata was now already like 57 years old. Before there was any sign of war in 1939, Sailor built its facility in Oyamura in Hiroshima. Then in 1940, aged 58, he decided to step down as the president of the company and become the chairman of Sailor. Then between 1941 and 1944, they opened up further offices in Tokyo and also decided to strategically build a factory in Shanghai too. China wasn't really touched from the war, and that definitely was a good spot where they could keep the operations going. And then sadly, in 1945, the factories of Hamadacho and Iwakadori in Hiroshima burned down because of the atomic bomb of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was actually between the 6th and the 9th of August. So we're talking about exactly the same period when this video is being published. But we know the resilience of Japanese people. So when the war ended in 1945, Sailor began immediately rebuilding the business, and they could do so also thanks to the Tenno factory, which survived the impact of the atomic bomb. Tenno is circa 20 kilometers away from Hiroshima. So they restarted all of their operation, even if it wasn't easy. And one of the first major achievements after the war was launching the first ballpoint that was fully manufactured in Japan. That was in about 1948. So you can imagine that the next 10 years were all about this post-war recovery. And Japan actually also faced a quite rapid economic growth. It's also known as the Japanese economic miracle. And then in 1955, another wonderful achievement and recognition was given to the Sailor Pen Sakata Manufactory Company Limited in Tenno. The factory was awarded with the Industrial Science and Technology Agency Chiefs Award. In late 1960, almost 61, to celebrate 50 years of Sailor, they renamed the company Sailor Pen Company Limited. And there's a touching and very important historical letter that was written by Mr. Kyugoro Sakata to commemorate this incredible achievement. And I wanted to mention just a few sentences from this letter, but I think that this letter has such an historical importance and it's a direct testament from the founder of Sailor that I'd like to read this letter in its full beauty. In a world where everything is cut down to keep the attention of the viewers, we want to dive deep into this industry and into such an important and historical piece of content of one of the most beloved brands such as Sailor. So join me while we go through this historical letter. This touching letter of Mr. Kyugoro Sakata is titled Through 50 Winters. From the dawning of a new era in Japan during the Meiji era to today's dawning of the space age, in my 80 years of life, I have journeyed 50 of those years with fountain pens. And looking back on my life, it feels like a dream. Japan has now become one of the top 3 fountain pen producing nations in the world, next to Germany and USA. And with the support of many, Sailor Pen has become one of the leading producers of fountain pens in Japan. At the age of 14, I moved from Okayama to Kure to be with my elder brother Saijiro. I believe this was between and after the Japanese Russo War, and Kyozaburo Shiraga, a friend returning from studying in England, brought me back a fountain pen as a souvenir. Oh, how my heart skipped a beat at the sight of a fountain pen for the first time. I struggled to find my way when starting the business. I was an inexperienced young lad turning a latte, determined to create fountain pens with my own hands. Kure, being a military port and Japan being an island, I felt we needed to develop the nation with our sights beyond the sea and named the business Sailor Pen. I would carry the fountain pens crafted diligently at our small factory in a drawstring pouch when going out to sell them. And when they did not sell as I had hoped, I felt great disappointment. Then we partnered with Dainippon Bungu Koyukai, an influential stationery trade organization of those times, and developed a sales network-like system. And I was overjoyed. On May 27, 1926, we welcomed the Emperor at our humble civilian factory, which at the time was like a miracle. And our employees and I pledged further commitment to our craft and rejoiced in the great business growth opportunity His Majesty's visit bestowed upon us. Deciding that we could not expect further growth in our own, in 1932 we became a business corporation. And just as we were beginning to see great business results, the Manchurian incident occurred and fountain pens were deemed inessentials in wartime, causing us to lack materials, human resources, and funds. However, the scarcity of fountain pens created a seller's market, and by removing various obstacles, we boldly extended our business at locations abroad, creating a factory in Shanghai and also becoming active in trading. While on the other hand, our Tenno factory's production of armament parts rose sharply, overtaking that of fountain pens, which was inevitable given the times. When our Kure factories producing fountain pens and ink burned down in the war, 150 of us, board members and employees, scraped together materials and using a rickety machine, we set out to rebuild our original business of producing fountain pens and inks. With little to eat in the post-war period, our stomachs were empty, but our souls were full of passion. And gradually, we strove to modernize the business, relocating our head office to Tokyo to broaden our horizons as a company and to expand the market. Who could have imagined how Japan would come to prosper and what Sailor Pen would be like today? Human ingenuity, strength, and cooperation, the results born of their accumulation, are truly amazing. I have nothing but the greatest gratitude to all who have supported Sailor Pen, both from the inside and the outside, making us what we are today. I'm truly grateful to be witnessing the 50th anniversary of Sailor Pen with my own eyes. Signed, Mr. Kyugoro Sakata. You see, Goodfellas, this letter is even more meaningful if we know that when Mr. Kyugoro Sakata wrote it, he was near to the day of his death. He passed away on the 9th of May 1961 at the age of 78 years. And what is wonderful to know is that he was awarded after that with the court rank of Senior 6th rank of the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Rays. This is an award that is given by the Japanese government to individuals who have made distinguished achievement in international relations, promotion of Japanese culture, advancements in their fields, development in welfare or preservation of the environment. I would say absolutely deserved. The rest, Goodfellas, is history that we are living right now. Sailor continued all its operation and innovated also by releasing one of the nibs that we love most, the 21 karat gold nib that is cherished today by collectors all over the world. Doesn't matter if it's on a professional gear, on a 1911 or on a King of Pen. The 21 karat gold nib was released around in the 80s, between the 80s and the 90s. And back at the time, especially in the Asian markets, there was this kind of innovation challenge between the brands about the grade and quality of their nibs. That was also the time when Pelican released their 20 karat gold nib that you can sometimes find on very few selected pieces of Pelican from the 90s, sometimes even signed with West Germany. Now, Pelican stopped producing the 20 karat gold nib pretty fast, but Sailor kept on developing that 21 karat gold nib, and we love it up until today. One of the most important and recent changes for the company has been in 2020 when it was purchased by the Japanese company Plus Corp that also owns Pentel. This change also marked a change of branding for Sailor, and the new logo was introduced in 2020, changing from this to this. You might find it interesting to know that today the Plus Corp owns around 57% of Sailor, while the other 43% are held by Sailor Pen Business Association and other private investors or companies. And 2023 marks really probably the most recent and biggest achievement of Sailor, which is the complete restructuring and modernization of the historic factory in Tenno that was built back in 1939. Today it's just known as the Hiroshima factory of Sailor. This building is now a beautiful, modern, sea-inspired white and blue building where our beloved writing instrument of Sailor are produced by skilled craftsmen, artisans, and engineers with an incredible amount of know-how. Well, Goodfellas, I hope you enjoyed this first of probably a series of videos where I'll be talking about the history of the brands. It really deepens our appreciation for a brand, knowing where they come from and how much effort and how much history and how much sweat there is and there was behind the making and the rise of a company that is still here after more than 100 years. I always enjoy doing all of this research, and I feel so happy when I'm writing the script and know that I will be bringing this to you here on YouTube. Now, I love to know from you, Goodfellas, how you felt while you were listening to this, what should we call it, kind of podcast? Let me know down in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel? It's a huge help and you won't miss out on a lot of exciting future content that is coming up. Thanks for watching, stay tuned, and don't forget that together we are changing the game.